Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Folks, Dr. Nausheena Hussain, Shero, absolute Shero, on the show in just a few moments. Guess what? She's going to provide the recipe for something called the Peacock Unicorn Method. Not only that, if you're a founder who's starting up or a founder who's down the road, she's giving a recipe on succession and succession planning and the impact for your organization. So let's turn to our guest now, who's here today, amazing Shero, Dr. Nausheena Hussain. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have a Shero on the show, Nausheena Hussain. Nausheena, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, wa alaikum salam, Tayyab. It's great to be able to talk to you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and what year was it? We were in Spain together. Was that 2018? It was pre-COVID, right?
Yeah, I think 17, maybe 17. Even the end of 16.
Yeah, it might have been 16, 17. Yeah, because when I met you then, you had started or were starting Rise.
Yeah.
Tell me what's happening at that time. What's Nausheena seeing in the world? What problem is she seeing that she's trying to solve? Like, and how did you go out there and do it?
Yeah, I would say about probably a year before we had met, I was noticing that Muslim women are always portrayed as either victims of oppressive systems or they were labeled as terrorists. And so these two negative narratives really were not, the profile of a typical Muslim woman. And on top of that, I was not noticing a lot of Muslim women in leadership role within the community. And I don't mean limited to the Muslim community, right? Like in the broader society as well. And of course, in towards the end of 2015, we were about to come into a really major election, right? We were seeing a woman for the first time run for the highest seat in this country. And so those three catalysts almost were like the ripe time for me to come together with a bunch of other Muslim women and ask these questions of like, what is it that you're seeing in the community? What's holding you back from taking on leadership positions? And what do you want to do about this negative narrative? And so gathering a group of Muslim women was kind of the first step of trying to understand what this problem was and how we could collectively approach it. And so I would say maybe 3-4 months later, boom, we started a nonprofit organization called Reviving the Islamic Sisterhood for Empowerment.
Reviving the Islamic Sisterhood for Empowerment. I love the name, by the way, and the acronym is great. Tell me, as you're seeing this problem, this movie is playing in my mind. Here's Nausheena, now mashallah, Dr. Nausheena. We'll talk about that later. She's watching the elections, and we have potentially a woman leader in the highest seat, inshallah, one day still. Mm-hmm. And you're also hearing this narrative about Muslim women. And, do you just go talk to some friends? Do you do an invitation to your home? How did you get started? And it sounds like you did this sort of, connecting, movement building before you went 3 months later and registered and started the organization.
Yeah. I actually was part of another nonprofit organization that was gathering people and having community conversations. So I kind of modeled my approach with that. And I remember talking to these two they were co-executive directors. And I was like, I want to do the same thing you're doing, but with Muslim women. And they said, okay, go do it. And I thought, no, I need you to help me do it. And that was really eye-opening because you don't need other people to like validate you in order to like start making progress towards something, right? And so I made a call out. I invited people in my network. We asked them to bring somebody along in the next conversation. And through that sort of snowball effect, we started to grow this like community of like different conversations. And when we had different topics in each one of them. And one of the biggest things that I took away from like that first conversation was I don't know enough Muslim women in order to even think about how to solve this problem. And so I was really surprised by that because it didn't dawn on me that, wow, there isn't a space where Muslim women go to gather. There isn't a physical space. There isn't a digital space. There isn't that sort of relational space for them to talk to one another and get to know one another. So that was the first thing that I wanted to do. I was like, let's establish sisterhood. Let's just get Muslim women together, get them to talk about like what's going on in their communities, in their lives. And let's start to see like, what are the trends? What do we have in common? What are we working on? And I'm telling you, one of the most exciting things during that time was to see like, wow, Muslim women are actually doing pretty amazing things in the community and like nobody knows about it. Right. Yeah. And so the storyteller in me was like, let's tell those stories. Right. So if we want to change a narrative, and this narrative is pushed by people outside of our community, that's very problematic. And so one of the first things we had done was establish the Muslim Sheroes of Minnesota storytelling project. Love it. Okay.
I learned that word from you, Sheroes, by the way, for the record. And I use it everywhere, especially as a dad of 4 rising Sheroes, inshallah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because people be like, what's a Shero? And I was like, oh, wow, you don't, I guess we say hero and heroine, right? And instead we chose to use Sheroes. But we started to tell these stories about the Muslim women in Minnesota who were also doing, problem solving work and changing things in their community. And it was really the goal initially was to like change the hearts and minds of people outside of the Muslim community. But really, as we started to do evaluation, we noticed it had such a profound impact on our own Muslim women, right? Like I had one woman that came up to me after we had profiled her and she was like, I was walking down the street and 2 Muslim women, younger women came up to me and were like, we saw your video and you're so inspiring. We're inspired to do good work in the community too. And she thought to herself like, oh, wow, I got to level up. Like now I'm seen as like a mentor and none of them feel like they're leaders, right? They really just think they're trying to make the world a better place. They're trying to fix a challenge that's happening in their community. And so I think storytelling had a very profound impact for all these young girls in our community to see role models that looked like them, which then translated to, hey, there's a leader that looks like me. I can actually aspire to be that as well.
Yeah, and right now there are founders, heroes and heroes, and they've got their idea. And they're stuck in this validation loop. Earlier, you said, Tayyab, when you have an idea or a passion or a problem that you want to go out and solve or you want to make the world better, you don't need validation. You just go do it. Tell me more about that. Like, and what advice would you have for somebody who's out there, like trying to sort of validate this thought? What should they be doing?
Well, I will say that in that first year, I was struggling with that sort of credibility validation problem within the community, right? Like the Muslim community wasn't buying what I was selling, right?
Okay. Fair.
I had this mission, which was to amplify the voice and power of Muslim women. And there were people who were like, why just Muslim women? Muslim women are not oppressed. Muslim women don't need their power. It was really hard to constantly explain to our own people, like what is happening out there. But what was interesting was outside of the Muslim community, I was being invited everywhere to talk about the mission. I mean, I jokingly call it this like Peacock Unicorn effect that was happening, right? It was like, I had people from the interfaith community. I had people from like gun violence prevention. I had people from different like advocacy and policy groups that were like, come and talk to us about what you are trying to do. And it was through those collaborations where my credibility like shot up, right? So now I'm on their panels, I'm at their speaking engagements, I'm at their events, I'm on the podium in their like big forums. And somehow, because I got that validation in the outside community, it then translated back to our community. And so this
Peacock unicorn effect. Is that what you said? Okay, I love it. Peacock unicorn effect.
Yeah. It's weird because it's like, you have to be careful with it because it's like, they're not expecting a Muslim woman wearing hijab to be articulate and smart and strategic and community driven. And so there is this really like, oh, wow, like what a peacock, right? Like I've never seen this before. But then it kind of moves and transitions to how do we make this transactional to more relational? And so you start to collaborate with these community members. And this is the advice that I have for young people is that you cannot do it alone. You have got to be in community with other communities in order to like move the needle, move the dial, or whatever you want to call it.
So as if I'm out there right now, young Shero, young hero who's thinking about solving a problem, if you're experiencing that same challenge that Nausheena faced, which is credibility inside the community, don't let that stop you. It sounds like, deploy the Peacock Unicorn Method, which is go find other communities, other organizations that are working on this and collaborate with them.
Yeah.
And that sort of builds up from there. So now here you are and you've achieved that. You've done these listening sessions, and I want to talk about that for a minute. If you had clarity in the problem, and then you start these building community, or and there was something else important you said. You said, Tayyab, I don't know all the challenges and problems that who I aim to serve is facing, and so I had to bring them in and have these conversations to understand that.
Yeah.
And so as you did that, what was the next step? What was the importance and what was the value that you got out of connecting with that community, building that community? What was the next step?
So not only did I not know all the challenges, I also didn't know all the solutions, right? This is something that I think a lot of people leaders struggle with, is like, I have to come up with the answer. I have to come up with the solution. And no, it's not the Nausheena show, right? Which sounds like a great podcast also. But instead, it's like, how do I share leadership? How do I invite people and center their experiences? Because they usually, I learned this like very early on. People who are struggling with that challenge, they probably have some level of a solution to provide, right? And
people who are struggling with the challenge probably have some element or some level of the solution. Love it. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So instead of me coming up with, let's try this, let's do this, you tell me what you think is the best way to solve this problem, and I will help facilitate it, right? Like I will help you plan it out strategically and put some goals into it, get some resources and all of that, right? I don't want to be the one that's like, okay, Tayyab, you're having a problem with A. Let me tell you, B is how we're going to solve it, right? No, yeah. I would rather be like, Tayyab, what's the problem? Okay, now what do you think you should do? And if you tell me a bunch of things, I'll try to facilitate that work in order to solve that problem.
I love that. I think in this model, so now you identified the bigger problem. The bigger problem was not enough women in leadership, women and public opinion. Muslim women are suppressed, or are terrorists.
Yeah.
And okay, how do I start working on this? Well, let me try to build community. But at the same time, I need to build credibility. Why is anybody going to want to come talk to me or meet with me or have this conversation with me? So deploy Peacock Unicorn strategy, but also bring people in like me who I aim to serve to have these conversations, and then learn from them, connect them, learn from them. What is the solution? And now let's say you had solutions. So what were the solutions? What did you do next from there?
Yeah. So I'll give an example around, because it was an election cycle, right? 2016. And I was big on this whole like model the behavior that you want to see. Okay. So there was this gap, right, between who's registered to vote and who actually votes, and then what happens between election cycles. And I think in the Muslim community, we are still struggling with how to show up in the 100%. Civic engagement, right? So I was like, okay, well, I don't know anything. How do I learn, right? And I had worked with an interfaith coalition on being more civically engaged, and because they were interfaith, it was kind of exciting to see like how people still centered their religious values in the process. And so they helped me understand caucusing and like what it means to caucus, how to show up in the caucus process, and all these different like conventions that followed all the way up to like a national convention. And my biggest eye opener was like, wow, the people who show up in these tiny steps here, they're the ones who determine what is on your ballot in November. And that to me was like mind blowing, right? And I did not see a lot of Muslims in that process. And so I was like, well, just like with the Sheroes project, how can I be what I cannot see? So I was like, I am going to go through this entire process in 2016. I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to share back. So hoping that in the next cycle, we will see more Muslim women and Muslims in general participate, right? And so the process is just crazy. Like I was just shocked at like how such a small amount of people really are influencing who you get to vote for later. And after all of that, I was like the only Muslim woman from my district that went to the state, and there were a handful of other Muslim men from the state of Minnesota. But in the 2018 cycle, that's when I saw a huge influx of Muslims going to caucus. I mean, these were midterm elections. It wasn't even a presidential cycle, right? But there was some statistic, I'm going to totally mess it up now, but it was like 400 Muslims in the Twin Cities went to caucus, and half of them were women. And the coolest thing about Muslim women is that we never go alone. We actually bring everybody with us. And I'm talking families, right? Everybody in the household. Let's go. So like, I remember taking my daughter. I remember trying to convince my husband, right? Like, and, you know, teaching my son the process, even though he wasn't old enough to vote. But it was like, this is the beauty of Muslim women, is that we don't just do it alone. We bring our whole communities along. And so when you invest in her, just remember you're investing in the entire community.
I love it. I love it. I love this journey as a founder also. Like, you know, you're sort of saying my job is, there is a bigger problem here that I want to solve, but my role is not to be the engineer, the business manager, the project manager, and to be everything. My job is to facilitate that process, you know, and it's powerful that you say that, because the most successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs understand that. And, you know, it goes to say, mashallah, that you are an amazing, successful Shero who's sharing that methodology here, that if you're out there listening right now, you don't have to have all the answers. You just got to know how to bring the right people in the room to find the answer, develop the answer, and get the work done. And the other thing that's powerful is, you know, when you want to fix a problem, go live it. Like you took the experience on in 2016, it sounds like, where you discovered, okay, hey, the power of caucusing, but I've never done it before. And embarrassingly enough, I've never done caucusing. And so now I got to come learn from you for sure. I would also say that this method, this Peacock Unicorn Method, also works with community organizing. Mm-hmm. Like you networked, you brought people in, and the unicorn of that activity was the solution, was the answer, was the next step. Yeah. But the unicorn came out of sort of bringing all these people, minds, hearts, and ideas together to find that solution to move to the next step. So it's like this, you know, Peacock Unicorn, Peacock Unicorn, Peacock Unicorn effect that took place over and over and over again. What are your thoughts as you look back? Is that kind of what happened?
So I was thinking about how every state, I guess most states, have a Muslim day at the Capitol, right? Yeah. And we're great at like going to the rally and like, you know, being there in the center of attention. But then we're all scared to go talk to our elected officials. And I totally was that, right? Like, I was like, I don't want to go talk to them. But the mindset switch that happened was like, these folks actually work for us. And so that was like, okay, flip the script here, right? And one of the things that Rise had started doing was a Muslim Women's Day at the Capitol. Tayyab, I want you to just imagine this, okay?
Yeah.
An American capital in the States where you've got like 50 to 100 Muslim women of all walks of life, diverse backgrounds, hijab, no hijab, walking through these halls looking for their elected officials to tell them the things that they are facing and expecting them to come up with a solution. Amazing. Just think about how powerful that is.
Yes, super powerful.
Yeah. And so this was like, if you didn't see this, you would never understand, like, you couldn't imagine a better world, right? Like, the more we showed Muslim women all these possibilities, they took the small idea we had and they started to make it bigger, right? Like, now I'm hearing Muslim women are trying to start political action committees. They are trying to use giving circles in a way to leverage funding. They are, they're running for different levels of office, right? Like, everybody was shocked when Ilhan Omar had run. But like, after her, do you see the amount of Muslim women that have stepped up? And it doesn't matter, like, if they're born American, refugees, immigrants, if they're young, they're old, everybody is stepping up because they're like, they understand that in order to make change, like, you have got to step into these positions and struggle so that you can get the reward of changing for the better of the community.
Amazing. No, and I want to thank you for being a catalyst for that, not only in Minnesota, but impacting everybody around. Part of your nonprofit founder journey, you did something that most founders today struggle with. And that was you exited.
Yeah.
So to all the listeners out there, you might be wondering, okay, is she still the executive director? Is she still on the board? The answer is nada.
No.
Right? So tell us about that. Tell us about, the exit, the succession plan, and what was that like?
Yeah. So when I had first started Rise, I knew I wasn't going to be doing it forever. And this is just who I am. Like, Tayyab, if you look at my resume, you will see transitions in between every 5 to 7 years, right? Either I am moving sectors, I'm moving jobs or departments. And so I knew right from the onset, I was like, yep, let's plan for what 5 years would look like. I'll bring this organization to a startup growth phase, and then I will hand it off. Because one of the pillars of Rise was leadership development. You cannot develop leaders and then not pass the baton.
Yeah, you can't develop leaders and not pass the baton. Wow.
Right?
Tell me more about that. Yeah.
Right? So I was like, okay, here's me training you on public speaking and shared leadership and transformational leadership and all of this. And then what? You take it home, theory, and just sit on it? No, I need you to like practice it. Right? So I knew that like I could only take this organization to a certain level, right? I don't have all the ideas. I don't have all the solutions. I don't have all the everything, right? And somebody else is going to come along and they're going to be great at that growth stage. And so COVID hit in the middle of it, right? And so I waited another like year or two and then started the process of like, it's time. It is time. Like I knew it was time. And the other thing that was like, we have seen organizations that have stagnated because the founder won't leave. And then when the founder leaves for whatever reason, that organization flops, right? Like it dies out. And then the third was like founders being pushed out, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be pushed out. I want some dignity in the process, right? Yeah. Like I want to go out on a high, like I want to normalize what it looks to have a healthy transition. And so alhamdulillah, I feel good about, and you were in that whole process with me. So you know how it went.
No, mashallah. I think we need a whole nother story, a whole nother mini series about sort of founder syndrome and succession planning. And I do think, mashallah, your story here at Rise is a success. But I want to share with the audience some of the keys that I picked up from that I think are powerful. One of the things that I picked up from that was, knowing from the start that you're not going to be there forever. And I think that takes tremendous humility. And I think that's part of Islam. I think that's part of us embracing our mortality.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I heard you say, Nausheena, is recognizing that I can only take it to a certain ceiling. And it'll stop there. And then I've got to know when I've gotten it as far as I can, and then sort of pass the baton on.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I heard you say is set it up for success on the way out, so it doesn't flop. And there's a whole bunch to that. And, I want to have you back out. We're going to have you back out for a mini series just on maybe founder syndrome and succession planning. Yeah. And then I think we're going to need you back out again for a Sheroes series. I think, as a dad of 4 daughters and my sons, I state my bias to them all the time. They advocate to their mom about how I favor the girls all the time, but I'm a girl dad all the way. So, we want to have you back out for that. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for giving us the recipe, that worked for you. The Peacock Unicorn recipe. Thank you for also sharing about, thinking about succession and success of the organization beyond yourself from the start. I think that's powerful. Maybe that could be a book that you could share with everybody. I don't know, one day, inshallah. Dr. Nausheena, thank you for being out. Really appreciate it. Any last words of advice for some founder listening to the show right now?
I would say invest in your own development. I think some of the most successful founders, executive directors are people who don't just lead, but they also invest in their own leadership skills development. And I think that was really important for myself. And I took advantage of everything that was out there to develop my skills in order to be able to be a good leader.
Thank you, Nausheena. Dr. Nausheena Hussain, thank you so much. Folks, invest in yourself. You heard it from her. Thank you for being on the show. We'll have you back out, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.